You should apologize to the customers, my manager said. The customers had just spat in my face. What happens when a black woman in fast food refuses to apologize for someone else's disrespect? You won't believe how her quiet stand turned a spit in the face into a movement. What followed changed the game for thousands. It all started with the sauce. Not just any sauce, mind you. The sauce. Spicy, creamy, a little smoky. The kind of condiment that made folks say things like, "That devil sauce hit me right in my soul." A little cup of it came free on Fridays, part of the Frankie's Friday deal, which was a corporate way of saying, we underpay our staff and hope hot food covers it up. It was Friday night at Frankie's Grill. That didn't mean tablecloths and jazz. No, this wasn't a date night kind of joint. It was a grease-stained floor, a kitchen that roared like an angry lawnmower, and a line of customers barking orders with the grace of a hornet swarm. The kind of chaos where nobody says please, and everybody swears they're in a hurry, even the ones wearing pajamas at 7 p.m. But Camila Rose handled it. She always did. She wasn't the fastest, but she was precise. She didn't charm people with fake smiles, but she remembered orders like a machine. She was the only black woman on that shift, and that wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern. The type of pattern you see in places where diversity is just a poster in the break room, but never at the register. And despite being the one they always leaned on, for double shifts, closing late, covering for no-shows, she kept her dignity wrapped tight around her like armor. It wasn't pride, it was survival. Dignity was all she had left after hours of, "Ma'am, can you smile?" and "Hey, sweetheart," from customers who didn't even look her in the eye. That night, she was on sauce duty as usual. "Would you like the devil sauce with that?" she asked the couple in front of her, holding the plastic ramekin with her usual grace. She was calm, poised, just doing her job. They were young, white, smug, the kind of smug that didn't need a reason. It just came with the haircut and the entitlement. The guy looked up slowly, wearing a cap with the Confederate flag on the front. "Yes, in Los Angeles." Like he wanted you to know he meant to be offensive. He looked her up and down, not like a person, more like someone measuring a crack in the sidewalk. "You think we're broke or something?" he sneered. "This your charity work, baby girl?" Camila didn't blink. She didn't frown. She didn't even tighten her lips. Because if you're a black woman in customer service, you learn real quick that any reaction becomes evidence against you. "It's complimentary today," she said flatly, placing the cup on the tray. That was it. That was all. And apparently that was too much. The girl with him, wearing bubblegum pink acrylics and a crop top that read, "Blessed," snatched her soda and threw it, in Camila's face. The cold fizz exploded. Syrup and ice hit her eyes, her nose, her neck, rolling down her apron, soaking into her bra. It wasn't a splash. It was a baptism. A sticky, carbonated, public act of humiliation. Let me tell you something. Humiliation doesn't smell like shame. It smells like corn syrup, cheap plastic, and the air right before you scream. The whole restaurant froze. No one moved. No one spoke. Someone pulled out their phone. You could hear the camera start to roll. Not a soul said, "That ain't right." Not one voice spoke for her. But Camila stood still. Frozen, yes, but not shattered. She didn't wipe her face. She didn't scream. Because every woman who looks like her knows the rule. If you flinch, you're aggressive. If you cry, you're unstable. If you speak up, you're difficult. So she said nothing. And then, like a shadow you didn't ask for, Michael appeared, the manager. Now Michael, well, he looked like the kind of man who filed complaints against his neighbors for playing music after 8 p.m. His hair always too neat, his smile too tight, and his attitude just a little too relaxed whenever someone said something inappropriate. He wasn't racist. Oh no, he'd tell you he loved everyone. He just had a way of making the black folks on staff feel like temp workers at their own job. He looked at Camila. Not at the couple who just assaulted her. Not at the Coke dripping down her face. At her. "You should apologize to the customers," he said. Just like that. No hesitation. No, "Are you okay?" No offer of a towel. No effort to diffuse the tension or, God forbid, remove the people who just degraded his employee. Just that one sentence, as dry as a paper napkin. Camila turned to him, slow. "They threw a drink in my face," she said. Her voice was low, flat, the way a storm sounds when it's still just wind in the trees. "They're upset," he replied, gesturing to the couple, who were now smirking again, like nothing had happened. The customer is always right, and there it was. The gospel of food service, carved into the walls of every chain restaurant in America. The customer is always right, unless the server is black. Then the customer is king, queen, and executioner. She stared at him. Are you serious? She said. Michael didn't blink. Professionalism, Camilla. Behind her, someone in the kitchen whispered, she's holding it together, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for preachers and soldiers. She unfastened her apron, slowly. Not a dramatic flourish, not a mic drop. She folded it neatly, as if to say, I'm not the mess here. You are. She laid it gently on the counter. I'll remember this, she said, and walked out. Outside, the summer heat slammed her like a second insult. The street smelled like pizza grease and car exhaust, and the sky had that burnt orange tint that made everything feel on edge. But Camila didn't wipe her face. She walked through the street with cola drying on her cheeks and neck, because she wanted people to see, to look her in the eye and recognize what just happened. She wasn't embarrassed. She was angry. At home in her Aunt Linda's two-room apartment that smelled like menthol rub and fried beans, Camila stepped into the kitchen, soaked, sticky, and silent. Aunt Linda, short and sturdy with a voice that could shake a courtroom, took one look and grabbed a towel. What happened, baby? Why you all wet? Work, Camila said. That was all, because Camila had grown tired of explaining her pain to people who just wanted her to let it go. Later that night, sitting in the tub with the steam rising around her, she opened her phone. And of course, the video was already online. 10,000 views, then 20, then 50. Caption, waitress thinks she's Mother Teresa. Comments, too sensitive. She should be lucky to have a job. If she can't handle people, she shouldn't be in service. Laughter, likes, retweets. The internet was laughing at her pain like it was part of the menu. Camila didn't cry. She didn't curse. She just closed the app and pulled out a notebook, not for journaling, for evidence. She flipped past old entries. A coworker sent home for asking not to work doubles 3 days in a row. A girl fired after refusing to serve a man who called her dark chocolate. Her own notes on Michael's favoritism. Her schedule. Names. Faces. Tonight, she didn't write anything. She just stared at the pages, and she thought. The next morning, she wasn't scheduled to work, but she dressed anyway. White button-up shirt, clean jeans, curls brushed back, face calm, eyes sharp. She didn't go to serve. She went to speak. Outside Frankie's Grill, a woman was waiting for her. Mid-40s, slick-back hair, blazer that meant business. Tara Green, lawyer, community organizer. She didn't need to ask what happened. She knew. They nodded to each other like soldiers before battle. You ready? Tara asked. Camila nodded. They hit record, and Camila told the world exactly what happened. Not just the drink, not just the insult, but the message behind it. The system. The quiet expectation that a black woman is supposed to serve and smile and swallow disrespect. That professionalism for her meant accepting humiliation with grace. Tara added only one thing at the end. If you think this is a one-time thing, you haven't been paying attention. 3 hours later, the video had 30,000 views. By nightfall, 100,000. By morning, 300,000. And it was only getting started. Morning did not start with a steaming mug of coffee. It started with a confrontation in the bathroom mirror, pale and unflattering under the fluorescent light. More interrogation than reflection. Camila stood before the fogged-over glass in Aunt Linda's cramped bathroom, blotting her face with slow, deliberate motions. Towel pressing against her cheek, fingers tracing the ridge of collarbone where the soda had dried into sticky lines. Every gesture was precise, almost military in execution, echoing the way a soldier readies herself for combat. Hair slicked back, chest tight, mind armored against the chaos waiting outside. Except there were no bullets, there were words. Judging eyes, smartphones poised like weapons, a suffocating corporate hush that roared louder than any gunshot, stifling in its authority, demanding performance, compliance, submission. That hush stung worse than any insult. It outlined the line she had been forced to walk for far too long, undetected and unremarkable if she stayed on script, yet punished the moment she dared to step off. Her phone sat on the vanity, silent, but the world beyond was thundering. Social media had erupted like old jukeboxes playing riotous jazz in a downtown lounge. Furious, dissonant, demanding attention. The clips she and Tara had posted, she recounting her story with nerve, cool, wounded honesty, had cascaded across Instagram, sparking on X, formerly Twitter, spreading on Facebook, echoing through YouTube comment threads. On TikTok, someone had layered a beat over her statement, "I will not apologize for someone else's spit." It hit hard, precise, impossible to ignore. This wasn't viral fluff. This was a communal cry. A chorus of voices rising from fast food workers, nurses, office assistants, people who had swallowed insults for far too long because losing the paycheck meant losing everything. Messages poured in. They made me serve tea to the man who called me chocolate bunny. I walked out crying. I told a white customer I would not serve her because she refused help from a black person. Got fired. Thank you, Camila. Camila sat at the kitchen table, phone in hand, scrolling through hundreds of comments. Aunt Linda stood at the stove, flipping cornmeal flatbreads, the aroma of fermenting dough and sizzling grits drifting through the air, warm and grounding in this moment of friction. Sweetheart, Aunt Linda began, pressing a kitchen towel into her hands before drying them off. You know there's no turning back now, right? Camila didn't look up. Blue-gray morning light filtered through the lacy curtain. Yeah, she said simply. There never was. At that exact moment, the phone rang. Unfamiliar number. But when she answered, the voice on the line was calm, confident, just a half-tone hoarse like tobacco smoke and tenacity pressed together. It was Tara Green from Community First. Good morning, Camila. We're ready. The offices of Community First sat on the second floor of an aging brick building in Inglewood, sandwiched between a barber shop that smelled of aftershave and a neighborhood fried chicken stand. That smell, paint thick, paper heavy, felt like commitment, like battle planning hours spent rooting through witness statements, waiting room grievances, little papers folded into hope. Tara appeared in the doorway first, black pantsuit, crisp as a courtroom, steels of polish on her shoes, and nails painted a severe crimson that screamed, I back excellence. Camila entered quietly, a slim figure in a white button-down and tailored slacks, posture defined by resolve circled around vulnerability and purpose. On the table lay the artillery, printed stills from security footage, dozens of sworn statements from former workers of Frankie's Grill, legal filings, charts, notes. Tara flipped through them as if cracking open a long-held case file. You have a case, she said, her eyes meeting Camila's with the clarity of someone who sees both the fight and the weariness. A real one, and one with precedent. Camila swallowed, her voice lowered to a whisper, not from fear but from fatigue. I don't want a courtroom showdown, she confessed. I never wanted to be that one. The face people point at. Too late for that, Tara said firmly. You're already that face. But now you get a choice. Keep silent and safe, or demand change loudly enough that everyone has to listen. Camila paused. The weight of responsibility hung heavy, like Aunt Linda's apron load of kitchen chores, like every time she'd swallowed insult to protect someone else's image. But beneath that burden, a quiet truth glimmered. Her silence had been complicit. Not this time. The following morning, Camila was summoned to Frankie's Grill. Official reason, resolution meeting. Unofficial reason, shut her up. The moment she stepped inside, she could feel the shift in atmosphere. Dull light, sanitized surfaces, eyes shaking off sleep and dread, and a whiff of stale grease trying to mask the tension. Michael was waiting, pale-faced, suit ill-fitting, glaring with that practiced, bland professionalism designed to mask uncertainty. He didn't offer a seat. He stood behind a counter that now felt like a podium locked in frost. We want to resolve this conflict, he said, voice smooth, too smooth. Camila leaned against a nearby wall, arms folded, tone cool as iced tea. Conflict? Interesting word. Usually that means both sides share blame. Can you remind me what I did wrong? Michael swallowed. He blinked, performing innocence like it was required attire. You've attracted publicity. We're losing customers. Inspections are coming down on us. Maybe if you'd say publicly that, Camila dropped the sarcasm gently but firmly, that I deserve to be drenched in soda, and I should have smiled through it, because that's how professionalism works. Silence was a tight fist in that room. Camila stepped forward. Her voice sank low, razor sharp. Michael, she said, I'm not your employee in that way anymore, and I will not be one. She unzipped her bag, pulled out a neatly folded document, the legal notice of discrimination proceedings, and placed it atop the counter in front of him. Give this to your lawyers. And Michael, you should get a better suit. That one reeks of fear. Later that day, Tara and Camila held a small press conference outside Frankie's Grill. A single camera, a banner with simple lettering, a few local journalists, one mic, quiet stillness ready to catch her voice. This isn't about the soda, Camila began, voice steady but ringing with the echoes of every woman forced to swallow insults in the name of service. This is about a system that expects Black women to be strong, polite, resilient, and silent. And when we fail to perform on command, when we stand up for ourselves, then suddenly we are the problem. She paused. Let that settle. I've carried that weight too long. I will not do it anymore. By early evening, the hashtag I don't apologize had lit up Twitter threads. Instagram reels filled with videos of Black women, eyes shining with resolve, sharing their stories. Screenshots came in. My sister works nights. They called her dark-skinned animal. She stayed quiet. Until now. Working in an elementary school, a parent insisted I smile. I smile now on my own terms. On camera. It wasn't a social media moment, it was an awakening. Then came the day they returned to Frankie's Grill. The place it all began. A crowd had gathered, 15 workers in uniform, 24 activists with signs, local residents, student unions, church group leaders holding cameras and speakers. One banner read, "Customer is king, only if his skin is." Another, "We are not napkins for your hate." The restaurant's front doors swung open. Michael emerged stiffly, flanked by 2 uniformed cops. The body language of the trio whispered raw expectation. He was the puppet master. They were the backup plan. "She's disturbing the peace," Michael said to the officers, pointing at Camila. "I want her removed." The policemen advanced, white, stern, serious, faces trained not to read nuance. Their postures radiated compliance with orders, not empathy for truth. But then something happened. Tara stepped forward. She produced the legal filings, showed them the video clip of the soda being flung, and the instruction to apologize. The lead officer glanced at the footage, blinked, then checked the paperwork. Then with a tilt of his head, "We will not intervene." Michael stiffened, mouth dropping open, as if swallowed by sudden heat. He spluttered about business losses and disorder, but the officer shook his head. "You can take it up with your legal counsel," witnesses in the crowd whispered. Someone snapped photos. A murmur of protest broke, and then applause. Voices crackled with relief, triumph, some tears, and Camila. She exhaled long and slow, not triumphant, not relieved, but centered. She had bent the field of power through presence alone. Later that afternoon, reporters flocked around Michael's car. That evening, local news broke. Frankie's Grill Corporate was conducting an internal review. Michael Jenkins, the manager, had been suspended effective immediately. By week's end, he was let go. But Camila didn't celebrate in flashbulbs or online selfies. She walked into a small studio interview set up by Voices Rising, a nonprofit committed to elevating stories like hers. Behind the mic, she sat poised, quiet but fierce. "This isn't about firing someone," she said softly, tone controlled and righteous. "It's about being told you should say thank you for being disrespected. We've been trained to swallow indignity with a smile. I refuse to smile anymore." She was invited to speak at community meetings, schools, faith-based gatherings. She faced groups of young girls with attentive eyes, their natural hair woven into braids and beads. They saw each other in her stance, and she in them. She thought, may at least one of them not suffer what I did. And then came a letter, unmarked envelope, official. Inside, a position offer. Title, Ethics and Rights Coordinator. Dining Industry Department, a living wage, a real voice, from the Collective Ethics Board. In Aunt Linda's tiny kitchen, letter in hand, they both grinned. Proud, exhausted, stirring cornbread mix that would smell of wisdom and warmth. "You ready?" Aunt Linda asked, mixing with her old wooden spoon. "Born ready," Camila said. "Just took too long to realize I already was." But the story wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. 2 weeks later, she returned to Frankie's Grill. Not as a server, not as a guest, but as an inspector, representing workers' rights. She carried a badge. Camila Rose, employee rights advocate, wore professional shoes again, but this time she walked on purpose. At the register stood a younger Latino man, eyes wide, hands gripping the counter, like it might shift. He recognized her. His head dipped in respect. She smiled, gentle but strong. "No need to be nervous," she said, lowering her voice so the other patrons heard only calm. "I'm not here for you. I'm here with you." He exhaled relief. She nodded to him and walked the floor slowly, looking at uniforms, inventory logs, training materials, searching for dignity, safety, accountability. Not looking for mistake, but justice. Everything looked clean and calm, but Camila knew a shift in atmosphere isn't visible. It's felt. It's the light that doesn't stink of fear. The boss who doesn't glare when a black woman laughs. The coworkers who don't act surprised she belongs. That night, she left the building into the warm twilight, head high, badge in hand, dinner casserole waiting at Aunt Linda's. She didn't need to shout victory. It was in her posture, in every steady step, in every woman who heard her story and stood up afterward. And if you think this is a singular tale, think again. The next voice might just be yours. The first few seconds felt like a silent movie. No soundtrack, no dialogue, just movement. Camila stood at the center of it all, shoulders squared, hands calmly by her sides, surrounded by 2 officers cut straight out of some outdated civic postcard. Their uniforms were starched to perfection, creases so sharp you could slice paper on them, faces as expressive as frozen statues. The older one, tall with a jaw like a shovel and eyes that scanned like supermarket scanners for expired milk, looked at Camilla not as a person, but as a checkbox on a clipboard. The younger one still had that naive shine, like he believed the badge itself answered all moral questions. "We received a complaint," the senior officer intoned, glancing at the paperwork in his hand as if it came from heaven's own inbox. "Disruption of business, obstruction of commerce." He didn't look at her. Not directly, because it wasn't about her, not really. It was about the system flexing, testing if this one was going to fold like all the others. But Camilla, she wasn't trembling. She wasn't begging. She just looked straight through him like she'd learned to do every time the world told her to step aside, because deep down she understood. This man wasn't the judge, just another cog. And she wasn't the wrench. She was the whole engine, running hot and loud and absolutely unbothered by their discomfort. "Do you have a permit for this assembly?" the younger one asked, eyes flickering with cautious curiosity. That was Tara's cue. She stepped forward like a queen in court, folder under one arm, voice as clear as a courtroom verdict. "Filed, logged, approved. You can check with City Hall," she said, her words precise and polished. "We're not violating a single law today, though the same can't be said for Frankie's Grill's internal policies. See, we broke those when we decided we wouldn't be quiet." She reached into her bag and handed over a tablet. The screen lit up with that image. Camilla, drenched in soda, posture rigid, while her manager calmly told her to apologize. The pause that followed wasn't long, but it thundered, the kind of silence that makes you lean in. The senior officer passed the tablet to his partner. The young man chewed the inside of his cheek as he watched the footage, eyes narrowing slightly. A beat later, the senior officer spoke. "We're not getting involved." Michael, standing near the door with a face like he'd just licked the bottom of the ocean, took a step forward, sputtering. "What do you mean, not getting involved? Can't you see this is disrupting my business?" The officer turned, slow and firm. "You can take it up with your lawyer." The crowd went still. Then someone clapped. Then another. A few folks started crying. Not loud sobs, but the kind of release that comes when you realize the world can bend in your direction, even if just for a moment. Camilla didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She exhaled. Quiet, controlled. Not a victory lap, just a breath, because she knew this wasn't the ending. It was just halftime. The next day, Frankie's Grill wasn't advertising their specials. They were on the 5 o'clock news, and not the feel-good segment. Reporters showed grainy camera footage, a stream of online complaints, headlines about race, silence, and soda that refused to be forgotten. Corporate issued a statement. "We are initiating an internal review. Manager Michael Jenkins has been placed on leave." A week later, he was gone. Not reassigned, not relocated. Terminated. Camilla didn't throw a party, didn't post a smirking selfie captioned, "Number sign by Michael, number sign." Instead, she sat in the dimly lit studio of Voices Rising, a podcast that spotlighted working-class stories, real people, real fights. "This isn't about getting someone fired," she said into the mic, voice level and solemn. "This is about a system that tells people like me to be grateful for being spit on, as long as there's a tip at the end." The host leaned in, nodding. Camilla kept going, not performative, truthful. She was invited to speak at rallies, at union meetings. One school asked her to address their graduating girls. Camilla stood before rows of young black girls with box braids and barrettes, eyes wide, soaking in every word. She looked at them and thought, if even one of you gets to walk into adulthood without having to bite your tongue in the face of disrespect, then this was worth it. Then came the letter, plain white envelope, no sender listed, just the crest of the Collective Ethics Board stamped in blue. Inside was an offer, Coordinator of Racial Ethics and Workplace Advocacy. It wasn't symbolic. It was a salaried position, with influence, with voice, with power. Aunt Linda stared at the letter like it was a golden ticket. "You ready, baby?" "I've been ready," Camilla said. "They just kept trying to trip me before I could walk." "But you want to know how it really ended?" Camilla went back to Frankie's Grill. Not as a worker, not as a customer. She returned as an inspector, with a badge clipped to her lapel that read, Camila Rose, Rights Advocate. She walked through the front doors with a clipboard in one hand, authority in the other. The same glass panels, the same greasy scent, but now the air moved different, like it knew she wasn't here for fries. She was here for accountability. Behind the counter stood a young Latino man, maybe 21, nervous in his uniform, his name tag askew. He spotted her and froze. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Camilla smiled, tight-lipped but kind. "Don't worry," she said softly. "I'm not here to check you. I'm here for you." His shoulders dropped with visible relief. His posture changed, respectful, thankful. She moved through the restaurant slowly, scanning equipment, observing staff interactions, noting training material. Everything looked cleaner, tighter, not just on paper, but in energy. The sneers were gone. The tension was dialed down. You could feel it, like the room had finally started breathing again. She knew the place hadn't transformed overnight, but something had shifted. The rules weren't the same anymore. And if someone thought they could throw a drink and walk away untouched, they'd be met not with silence, but with Camilla Rose. And not Camilla the cashier, Camilla the advocate, Camilla the example. Camilla, who didn't apologize for someone else's spit and taught thousands that they didn't have to either. You might think this story is rare. You might want to believe this doesn't happen all the time. But think again. This wasn't an epilogue. This was a prologue.